Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Olivine Raiders going up against the Laverre Constrictors. And as these two sides have a look at their opening hand, let's have a look at this tale of the tape, because for both these sides, they had a fantastic first round, but since then they've both run into the Pastorio Hydras, and that changed the complexion of their season greatly, as they're both now sitting on the outside of the top 5, looking in, both wanting to return to victory road this season and looking to continue their momentum forward. They want to win this matchup. So with all that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the metal decks? Will it be the psychic decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And starting off this match for the Olivine Raiders, they're playing their Steel Sentinel deck, moving the Clink into the active spot. Now they've already got the Clang and the Clang in their hand, plus the Professor's Research and the Pokemon Communication. It's the Smoochum from the Brainwave deck of the Laverre Constrictors, as the second Clink is pulled for the Raiders, and they are going to play that Professor's Research to get the Lyra and the Steel Apron, but they're also going to play the Pokemon Communication here. A very interesting decision as we look to see what they're going to put back into their deck to get a different Pokemon out in return, and they're sending the Clink back into their deck, already having the full Clang line, hoping for a different basic Pokemon, and they are successful. They do get the Pawniard out of their deck, as the Constrictor's currently inside their hand. They've got the Slowking, both Slowkings, the Xatu, and the Will here. Keeping in mind, Smoochum with that Shivery Wave can go on the offensive based on the amount of energy on the opposing Pokemon for 0 energy cost. But it is the Natu coming online, and that Shivery Wave will be doing 0 damage because there's currently 0 energy on the Clink here, but it is 20 damage for every energy that is attached to the opposing Pokemon. So it comes back over to the Raiders. They do pull their potion, but they don't need that just yet. However, they can choose to get the Clang online if they want, but they are going with that single energy of Clink. They don't want to go for the evolution just yet. They want to be able to go on the offensive, putting Smoochum into discard range, only having 10 health remaining. The second Natu has been pulled for the Constrictors, and they are going to get that Xatu online. Now, Xatu, with that life drain, can bring the health of Pokemon down to 10, but they cannot discard them from the table with that life drain, and they are going to retreat the Smoochum, which can allow them, as they use this will guarantee a head flip for this life drain. It will bring the Clink down to only 10 health remaining. And the benefit for this, for the Constrictors, is it does get that 50 damage onto Clink. They don't know that the Clang is in hand of the Raiders, as they do pull their second Clang as well, which is way too fun to say. Clang does require that second energy, but it's only got 30 health remaining now, and that Smoochum capitalizes on the energy on the opposing Pokemon. So this potion is very beneficial for the Raiders because it takes Clang out of discard range from the Smoochum of all Pokemon, and with this Gear Cutter, they can halve the health of the opposing Xatu. Xatu being brought down to only 40 health remaining. The Constrictors, they pull their Memory Light. This is fantastic on a Xatu because it can allow it to go for the Peck and use that 20 damage. So if they put the opposing Pokemon into discard range with the life drain, that Peck can wipe them from the table, as we're still yet to see any battle points taken. The Natu getting its first energy, and it is another head flip, and this time it wasn't guaranteed from the life drain. Another 40 damage onto the Clang, again bringing it down to 10 health. It is in discard range, as the Magina has been pulled for the Raiders, but the Clang with that Gear Spinner is online, 70 damage on the first turn, but if it does it on the second turn, it doubles in power, 140 damage. But not just that, they're going to get that Steel Apron onto the Clang. This reduces the damage it takes from opposing Pokemon by 10. And with this Gear Spinner, it will be the Raiders taking the first battle point here in Game 1, as it is the first to 3 battle points, but you get 2 victory points as well for every game that you win. So Game 3 is just as important as Game 1. Keep it in mind as well, every ounce of damage counts towards our leaderboard as a second energy on to the Natu, but it is the Shivery Wave that will allow that 50 damage onto the Clang, as it is brought down by 10, again thanks to that Steel Apron. It is the Bishop being pulled for the Olivine Raiders, now coming online. It does require 2 energy for that Metal Claw for 70 damage as well, but here it is, 140 damage. This may be a little bit excessive, but it's all about that damage counter as well, as it is the Smoochum being wiped from the table, and the Raiders, they are 1 point away from taking Game 1 over the Constrictors. We see Natu being moved into the active spot, and Mushana being pulled for the Constrictors as well. And Natu receiving its third energy. With this Peck, it's only able to do 10 damage because of that Steel Apron, and this is going to free up the Raiders. They pull their Clang, but they're concerned about that win, and with another Gear Spinner, another 140 damage. It is another point for the Steel Sentinel deck as they take game 1 over the Brain Wave deck from the Laverre Constrictors. But as we have our first table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please leave a like, hype, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the action in the PokeType League TCG. But the Olivine Raiders will be going first as we head into game 2, and they're playing their Claptrap deck, and we can see the Morwile plus the Alolan Diglett in hand. They've got the Rocky Helmet, they've already got the Alolan Dugtrio, and they've got the Potion, but it is the Morwile into the active spot, Diglett on the bench. And the Constrictors looking at their opening hand as well for their Eon Ruins deck. They've got the Togepi, they've got the Power Unknown, the Power of the Unknown, and they've got the Latios. As they do move the Latios onto the bench, Togepi in the active spot. Now Togepi with that Charm doesn't do any damage, but it reduces the damage it takes by 20 from opposing Pokemon. And the Raiders, they've got 2 Pokemon tools in hand. They've got the Rocky Helmet, they've got the Giant Cape. They can use either one of these, but you can only attach 1 per Pokemon. As the Laverre Constrictors, they pull their Guard Unknown, and when both of these are on the table at the same time, it boosts the damage that the Constrictors Pokemon do by 10. It reduces the damage they take by 10. And they do get that energy onto the Togepi, so it can go for the Charm. This will reduce the damage that Morwile outputs by 20, but it also reduces it by 10 thanks to the Guard. However, keeping in mind that Bite is super effective because it is the steel types, the metal types of Morwile and the Olivine Raiders. They're super effective against Pokemon like Togepi, so it still is able to capitalize, getting that 20 damage. And normally when we see moves do 0, that weakness doesn't actually do the additional 20 because they're doing 0 damage. So very interesting dynamics there, as thanks to the Professor's research being pulled by the Constrictors, they do get the Togetic plus the Clefairy in hand, and they've already got the Togekiss, and we've seen what that Celestial Blessing is capable of, causing Togekiss to take 0 damage from opposing Pokemon, as that Speed Dive gets the 40 damage onto the Morwile thanks to that boost from the Unknowns, the Steel Apron being pulled for the Raiders. Do think of getting the Potion onto the Morwile here. This will boost its health by 20, keeping in mind if they were to attach that Steel Apron, it would reduce the damage it takes by 20, but instead they're going to attach the Rocky Helmet. What this will allow is 20 damage to be done to the opposing Pokemon who they take damage from. A first energy onto the Alolan Dugtrio and the second Morwile on the bench. As we get that Bite, 40 damage onto the Togekick. With all that mathing around, that is where it ends up, as it does get reduced, but then it gets plus thanks to the weakness. But that second Togekiss is pulled, immediately coming online. That magical shot does do 70 damage as Togekiss. Again, that Celestial Blessing can prevent it from taking damage, but thanks to the Power Unknown, it does do that additional 10 to wipe Morwile from the table, and it is the Constrictors looking to take game 2 as they do take the first point in this match. Raiders now thinking of where they want to approach this. If they get the Dugtrio into the active spot, it is a coin flip for these Iron Heads. They get consecutive heads, and for every heads, it is 70 damage. But as soon as they get a Tails, even if it's the first one, they stop, which means if it happens on the first one, they get 0 damage done. As that Rescue Scarf is attached to the Alolan Dugtrio, which means if it does take damage from the opposing Pokemon and is discarded, it will go back into the hand of the Raiders. And there it is, the Tails on the very first flip. So 0 damage guaranteed to be done to the Togekiss, regardless of the fact that that Celestial Blessing was a 0, which means that the Raiders, they desperately needed the heads on that one because they have to contend with this Celestial Blessing. The Rescue Scarf being pulled for the Constrictors as they are starting to set up this Luster Purge Latios, and they are going to attach that Rescue Scarf to the Togekiss. And they do go for another magical shot with that boosted damage output from the Power of the Unknown, bringing Dugtrio down to only 10 health remaining. The second Alolan Dugtrio has been pulled for the Raiders. And it will be Morwile receiving that one and only required energy here. And the Raiders, they're trying for that Iron Head again. They do get the heads on the first one. They need a second one if they really want to guarantee that maximum damage output. But here it is, the Constrictors. They need to flip the heads, and they do flip the tails. This is what the Raiders need, as they do get that 80 damage onto the Togekiss, but it will be going back into the hand of the Constrictors as the Raiders, they get their first point, getting rid of that Celestial Blessing. And it is the unknown with the hidden power. It's the power unknown, as they do pull the Latias for the Constrictors. Keeping in mind, unknown only requires a single energy and it's guaranteed to do 20 damage. Dugtrio only has 10 health remaining. The Constrictors thinking about how they want to approach this. They are going to get that single required energy onto unknown here. Keep looking through their hand. They have options. They have one open slot on their bench right now, as they can go for this hidden power and get their second battle point in game 2, discarding Dugtrio from the table, but it does go back into the hand of the Raiders thanks to that rescue scarf. Meanwhile, is the only benched Pokemon going into the active spot for the Raiders. And we do see the Pokemon communication being pulled for the Raiders, as it is the Alolan Diglett coming online. They are going to get that Steel Apron onto Mawile. This will reduce the damage it takes by 10 from opposing Pokemon, plus it cannot be affected by any special conditions. And now with the unknowns, they're not actually weak to the metal types either, as that Pokemon communication will be played by the Raiders. They send one of the Dugtrio back into their deck to get a different Pokemon card out, and it will be the Klefki. They do get Klefki immediately onto the bench. They're going for the bite. This will get 30 damage onto the unknown, but it is reduced by 10 thanks to that guard of the unknowns coming into play. The Giant Cape being pulled for the Constrictors, and now the Constrictors, they're going to get the Latias onto that final bench slot, although they're taking their sweet time, but they do decide to go with it here. Keeping in mind, Latias only requires the single energy. They get the second of 3 required energy onto the Latios, and they're going to get the Giant Cape onto the unknown. This will boost the health of the unknown up to 60. With another hidden power, they get that 20 damage now onto them. While it would be 30, but it is that Steel Apron offsetting that additional 10 damage. Second Klefki being pulled for the Raiders, and the Alolan Dugtrio is back online with that Giant Cape being attached, boosting its health up to 110, and it does get that second required energy. They are going to retreat them a while here. They want to maximize their damage. They just need to flip one heads to wipe unknown from the table, and they get it on the first one. They will only get one, and that is all they need to have unknown discarded from this contest, getting their second point, and it will be the next point that takes game 2. But as I say that, Latios, those two, not confusing whatsoever for anybody, I'm sure, but it is Latios going into the active spot with that Luster Purge, getting that third energy and 120 damage output to wipe Dugtrio clean from the table, and this Eon Ruins deck will be taking game 2 over the Claptrap deck of the Olivine Raiders. And now with our final table reset, we are going into a game decider between the Raiders and the Constrictors, with the Constrictors flipping ahead, so they will be going first, and they have that Perish Trap deck that they will be playing, having the Wobbuffet, their only basic Pokemon, going into the active spot. For the Raiders, they've got their Metal Coat deck, where all of their basic Pokemon are not Metal types, but they all evolve into Metal types, and it is the Onix in the active spot. But here we go, our Game 3 decider. And it is that Traveling Merchant being played by the Constrictors. No Pokemon tools in the top 4 cards. They all go back, and they do get shuffled as the Traveling Merchant goes into the discard pile. They've got the X-Beat, the Rescue Scarf, the Galarian Coastler, and the Potion in hand. It is the Scizor being pulled for the Olivine Raiders as they play their Professor's Research. They pull the Steelix, and they pull their second Scizor. They have got the Forretress, their own Traveling Merchant, and the Lara. They get a first of 3 required energy onto the Onix, and it does 50 damage with that 3 energy, the poor thing, as the Cursor does get joined by the Corsola that is pulled from the Constrictors, immediately going onto the bench as well. Constrictors thinking about how they want to approach this. Wobbuffet with that Reply Strongly does 30 damage, but if it just took damage from the opposing Pokemon, it does an additional 50, so it's capable of doing 80 damage. It is the Pokemon communication being pulled for the Raiders, and they do play that immediately, sending one of their 2 Scizor back into their deck to get out a Pokemon card in return, and it is the Pineco. Already having the Forretress, they need the Scyther as well if they want to get that second Scizor online, but it is the second energy onto the Onix. They do play their own Traveling Merchant, and they do look at their top 4 cards. There's a Rescue Scarf and a Memory Light. That Memory Light does allow an evolved Pokemon to use the moves of the Pokemon it has evolved from. So if Steelix were to be online and have 3 energy, it could use the Headbutt of the Onix, as it is the Miss Magius being pulled for the Constrictors, and they are looking at their Galarian Coastler with that Perish Body ability as well as it comes online. If it is to be discarded from damage from an opposing Pokemon, they get to flip a coin, and if it's a heads, that opposing Pokemon is discarded as well. But there's that 30 damage onto the Onix from the Wobbuffet, the second Onix being pulled for the Raiders, as now they get that Steelix online, who has a 4 energy offensive cost for that heavy impact, 110 damage though. That is indeed some heavy impact. There is the third energy on the Steelix, as the Fortress has also now come online. A very energy hungry deck here do the Raiders have with this Metal Coat deck. Now thinking about how they want to approach this, they've got the Memory Light in hand, so they could actually go on the offensive, but it seems they may not want to take the damage from that Reply Strongly of the Wobbuffet, so a very calculated decision there by the Raiders, as the Memory Light as well for the Constrictors has been pulled. And they are going with the X-Speed. This will allow them to retreat Wobbuffet for 1 less energy, moving that Galarian Cursor into the active spot, and they're going to attach the Rescue Scarf to the Galarian Cursor. Cursor will not be able to go on the offensive, but as we said with that Perish Body, if it's knocked out by damage from the opposing Pokemon, that Perish Body allows for the coin flip, where the Constrictors flip the coin. If they get a heads, it would take out the opposing Pokemon as well. But with the Rescue Scarf, this would cause Cursor to go back into the hand of the Constrictors. They do attach that 4th energy to Steelix, which means it can discard Cursor from the table, but they attach their own Rescue Scarf to Steelix as well, because they want Steelix to come back into their hand. So they do go for the heavy impact. They need the Constrictors to flip a tails, because Cursor is going to be wiped from the table. The Perish Body comes into play. They need to flip the heads, and they do, which means Steelix as well will be discarded. But unfortunately for the Raiders, it does not go back into their hand, because it was taken out by the Perish Body. The Constrictors have outsmarted the Raiders on this play. The Wobbuffet into the active spot for the Constrictors, the Fortress into the active spot for the Raiders. A fantastic play there by the Constrictors with that Perish Body, and they are looking at the hand of the Raiders thanks to that silver, allowing them to put the Lyra back into the deck of the Raiders to be reshuffled in. That Corsola going back onto the bench, and another energy onto the Wobbuffet to allow for this Reply Strongly. Again, 30 damage, doing the additional 50 if they take damage from the opposing Pokemon. The Raiders, they pulled their second Fortress, already having their second Pineco in hand. They've also got that Onix, and it is the Pineco coming online. And they are going to attach a first energy to Pineco on the bench here. They're willing to let Fortress take this damage from the Wobbuffet, who is a very deceptive threat. The Constrictors, they pull their Misdreavus, already having the Mismagius in hand. Misdreavus coming online with that Infiltrating Inspection. They can look at the opposing side's hand. Now, they have seen it, but they are double checking to see what 4 cards are being held. And it is that Galarian Cursor again coming online. That Perish Body, a huge asset for the Constrictors right now. That got rid of the Steelix. Otherwise, Steelix would be running rampant through this game 3. Scyther has been pulled for the Raiders, and it is going to come online, only requiring a single energy, but they're also going to get their second Fortress online. They do have the Memory Light, however, which has not been used. They do get a first energy onto the Scyther, not trying to set up the Fortress on the bench just yet, who is capable of that 80 damage. It is the second Corsola being pulled for the Constrictors, and it is Mismagius coming online, only requiring a single energy. And they do get Cursor its second required energy as well, but they continue with these Reply Stronglies onto the Fortress. The Steel Apron now being pulled for the Raiders. Wobbuffet is still at full health. Both these sides have only taken 1 point in game 3. It is Sizzle though coming online. That Gale Thrust can capitalize on being doubled in its potential, doing 50 damage regularly, but if the Sizzle has moved from the bench to the active spot during that turn, it does double in its power output. They get the Steel Apron onto the Fortress. The Giant Cape has been pulled for the Constrictors. A very methodical matchup between these two sides, both wanting to move back into the top 5. And they are going to retreat the Wobbuffet here, moving the Cursor into the active spot. This spooky shot capable of 60 damage. It will be reduced by 10 because of the Fortress. As we said, it does have that Steel Apron that does reduce the damage, but it's only got 40 health remaining, and this allows the spooky shot to take the Fortress off the table, and the Constrictors have just taken the lead in game 3. They need 1 more point to take this matchup. And it is the second Fortress back into the active spot. They have just pulled their Lyra as well, keeping in mind, as we said, Fortress doing 80 damage, but it's also that Sizzle capable of 100 damage, and Lyra can allow for a free retreat cost if the active Pokemon has damage on it. The second Miss Maggie is being pulled for the Constrictors here. Cursor is in discard range. And the Constrictors thinking about how they want to play this. They've got the potion, they've got the memory light. They are thinking of attaching an energy here to the Wobbuffet. And that is exactly what they're going to do. So Wobbuffet receives its second energy. But they're going for another spooky shot with the Cursor. 60 damage onto the Fortress. Cursor is in discard range, but that Perish Body is in play. If it does get discarded by the Raiders, they will have to contend with the fact that a coin flip could cost them this matchup. It cost them their Steelix. They are going to get a second energy onto the Sizzle. They play the Lyra, allowing the retreat of the Fortress. They want to maximize their damage here. And with this Gale Thrust, Cursor will be discarded from this match, but it's the Perish Body. They need to flip the heads. And they do! The Constrictors 2 Perish Body eliminations has won them this matchup. It is a second point for the Raiders, but it is the third point for this Perish Trap deck over the Metal Coat deck, and the Constrictors take the win, moving themselves all the way up to second place as next round they are going up against the Levincia Wonders. Whereas for the Raiders here next round, they will have the bye, but following that they'll be going up against the Opelucid Frontiers. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what cards you pulled today, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I will see you when you see me.